I'd like to call this meeting of the Operations Committee to order. The first order of business is acceptance of the minutes. Are there any corrections, deletions, additions to the April 1st, 2019 minutes? Seeing none, we'll take a vote on these. That would be Mr. Votto. We'll start with you.
Yes.
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 And yes. Next item of business is discussion and possible consensus on the financial report for April 2019. Mr. Barone?
Good evening. We had I guess I'll call it a pretty good month. We saw an increase in our unencumbered balance of about $179,583. Our current unencumbered balance is now $1,008,644. The biggest contributors to that increase are the tuitions, where we saw about a $60,000 reduction in the projected deficit. And the two key factors was we got our final excess cost number, and that went up about $17,000. And also some of our actual tuitions, we were able to reduce them based on estimates throughout the year of about $43,000. So that accounted for about $60,000 of the increase. The second biggest driver was utilities, and that was it was actually bigger than tuitions. It was an $82,500 swing, and that was primarily due to the oil. And so I'm a little bit cautious on that one, because I think some of it could be timing when we get a delivery. It's not, unlike the electricity and the natural gas and all, we get billed for the oil as it's delivered. We don't really have a great count of what was consumed, other than when we get another delivery. And then the third item was transportation. We saw about $14,000 in savings due to reduced rides. One was a canceled vehicle, and then some of the other ones are just when students do not attend, and we're able to actually cancel the ride before the company sends the van to pick up the student. The last is on the salaries, and the real change there was we had a couple of vacancies we were carrying, and at this point in the year, we just figured we're not going to fill them by the end of this year. We still intend to fill them, but it would be probably over the summer, or it might even be, we may find candidates, but they're probably not going to start in the next month or so. A couple of other factors, we saw a little bit of an increase in the unemployment, or a reduction in the unemployment deficit, a little bit of increase in Medicare, about $7,000, a little bit in the plant maintenance. We think there might be a little bit of surplus there. And those were the main drivers that really, what I would say, significantly increased our unencumbered balance.
Questions?
I've been asking this almost every meeting, I think. What was the percentage of the excess cost reimbursement? Sorry.
No, that's all right.
I think we estimated 70.
70%, yeah, so it came in.
A little bit higher
It was
than that.
higher. It was 73%.
Okay.
Actually, 73.62. It was, the previous estimate was, on the amount of reimbursement, not the budget number, was 75.71. That was the initial assessment or estimate that the state used, and they reduced it by a little over 2 points.
But we had budgeted the
But we had
70,
budgeted
Aaron,
at
as you
70.
said. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the report? Seeing none, we'll take consensus on the financial report for April 2019, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
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 And yes. Next item of business is the cafeteria reports for April 2019. Mr. Barone?
Okay, April, I'm going to give you a summary of the month. We had a good month. We had a profit of $12,458 for April. We had one extra serving day compared to last year, April, and we sold 5,123 more meals. So clearly our sales are up, because we don't sell that many meals in a day. That's probably, we sell a little over 2,000. 2,200 is a good day. Revenues and expenses were both up approximately 27,000 over last year. So we had almost the same profit April of last year versus April of this year, but, you know, we sold a lot more meals. We reduced our year-to-date loss down to $14,933. Through April of last year, it was a loss of $40,611. So we're tracking, you know, significantly better, I would say, than last year.
That's amazing.
We are gonna, you know, we're gonna really need to make up this $14,933 in May, because June is so short this year that I don't think we're gonna have an opportunity to make up very much at all. And in fact, we might even lose a little bit because of the year. But, you know, we're certainly tracking better than last year, and I would say overall, you know, it was a good month. Other things that happened, just so you know, we bid out some equipment, we got the results back, awarded the bids. We have not had the items installed, but we did award them to Kit Ridge, and we're waiting to get that done. And hopefully you won't ask me what they are, because I'm not sure what they've ordered, but we combi ovens or some other different things. But anyway, that's in the works. As far as the B2 page, the second page, which is the summary, this is really just, you know, it's a summary of the profit and loss, but I just want to highlight the last column, the per day variance is the key one. And you'll see that the per day variance right now is almost 11%. So we're selling almost 11% more meals this year than we did last year. And so, you know, that just, I think it dovetails with what our financials have looked like for most of the year. They've looked, I think, pretty positive. Moving on to the participation worksheet, which is B3, I'm sorry, no, B4, get it right. There is no B3, no. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
B3 is the balance sheet. B4, the participation worksheet, it showed a participation of 59.4%. This is down just a bit from last month. We were down about 15 meals a day from March, but when you compare it to April of 2018, we're up 195 meals a day. So, you know, I think it's. I said we were down 15 meals a day.
From March.
In March, from March, I'm sorry. So I'm looking at the total meals, the grand total of 2,263 per day. So it's pretty equivalent to March and significantly better than last April. As we, you know, I think if you remember last year, the sales were picking up this time of year, so I guess the bar is getting raised on us. All right, and that's really, you know, our participation right now, it's been significantly stronger than last year. The last item to cover is the lunch price equity, or the lunch prices. Now I'm gonna hand this out.
As Dominic is doing that, this is the annual review that we have to do with the federal government to make sure that there's enough differentiation between what we charge for lunch versus what we get reimbursement from the state or from the federal government for free and reduced lunch. You'll note that when we went to the budget hearing at the town council, we weren't sure because we had to look at where we were. We said that we could potentially have to raise prices. We didn't want to just do it arbitrarily. We wanted to base it on the data from the federal government. What this is recommending is a 10 cent increase to each lunch level. Correct?
Correct. So we have to, essentially, we need to get our weighted average meals over $3. And to do that this year, I think the best way to do it is 10 cents across the board. What this will equate to is probably, potentially, if everybody continues and we don't have any decrease in participation, approximately $24,000 of additional revenue. But we're not doing this to raise revenue. We're doing this because we're required to. Otherwise, the federal government we can get in trouble on the federal reimbursements.
Yes. Mr. Votto?
Make sure you're on.
I'm always on.
There you go.
Okay. No, I forgot what I was gonna ask. Now, if our numbers increase for a reduced and free lunch, does that number get increased as well?
The amount of
From the
reimbursement.
federal government?
The reimbursement doesn't increase per meal.
No, I don't mean,
The amount of money we get back, of course.
no,
we
I
get-
mean, does the government, you know how the federal government now says we need to be at a certain point?
Correct, for our
Does
paid
that-
lunches.
Does that go up if our numbers go up?
No,
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 what
it'll always
drives,
stay,
yeah.
if the reimbursement rate goes up, then that would drive, because that's what they're
But
basically
this,
trying
they're
to,
not connected, Mike.
the participation of them is not.
Correct.
Yeah.
The participation and what we get for reimbursable meals for free and reduced are not connected. The federal government sets the free and reduced rate, so if they choose to increase it, then we get more money.
okay.
But if we sell more or we access more of our free reduced lunch population, which we're trying to do, we'll get more money, because obviously we have more students being fed, but it doesn't increase the price that we're getting reimbursed. We don't get more money because they raise the amount per meal. We only get more money because there's more meals going out to those students in need.
Right, but there's a certain threshold they're holding us to, correct? That we should charge
Correct.
because of that.
Based
Correct.
on their reimbursement
calculation.
rate,
Based on-
but not on the number of people buying the lunch, or not on the number of people getting the free lunches, but what we get reimbursed per lunch.
All right.
I mean, the intent of this whole calculation is to make sure that we are not subsidizing our paid lunches, so that,
Right.
you know, we don't sell lunches for $1 and the government's paying us $4 for them.
Correct.
Mrs. Purcell?
I just had am I on?
Yes.
Okay. 2 questions. One was, we raised the lunch, was it last year we raised it? I thought it was last year
We
we did.
raised it last year, I believe not in the elementary schools, but I believe in,
On the high
Yeah,
school.
not for
school.
this
Yeah.
school year. The school year 17-18 we raised it, but not 18-19.
no.
No, because I was on the board at that time, and I would have only been one other budget year.
Yeah,
Oh, so then we did,
yeah.
to be honest,
But I believe.
Oh, it was a
it-
nickel
yeah,
at the-
And
yeah.
I don't believe it was the elementaries, I believe it was just the high school and the middle school.
I think it was
Yeah.
that also. Okay, that was one question. And then I remember last year asking, so if we raise the lunch rate, are we changing the à la carte to prices, or are we not going to change those prices?
I don't think we were looking to change the à la carte prices because those are already,
Okay, no, I just
Higher.
don't want to hit people double up, that's all
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure out.
well, because remember, and this was before you were on the board, but remember, there was like the perfect storm, the year that they reduced the quantity of food, or the size of the food. We raised the price of the lunch, plus we raised the à la carte prices, and I think we actually had to bring back the à la carte prices during that year because it was a double whammy for the students. So we're not looking to raise the à la carte.
Okay.
Mrs. Castelli?
I just want to make sure that we can somehow communicate to our population that the reason for the increase has nothing to do with trying to increase our profits. It has to do with staying within the guidelines that the federal government is holding us to.
That's a very good point, because I know that was, we had a large discussion, or a long discussion about that at our meeting with the town council, that, again, we want to make sure that we're being respectful to the families of Wallingford, but we know that if we have to stay within the federal guidelines, that we have to make the increase. So when we compose the letter with our interim food services director, we can make sure. And that'll go out, we have to get that out before the end of the school year, so people are aware of this. So we'll make sure that we send that out and also post it on our website, both in English and in Spanish.
Okay, good, thanks.
Milk prices aren't going up, right?
Well, the
Our
milk
costs-
prices, you
Milk
said?
pri- well,
We have to
cost
go out to
price.
bid, so we won't know those prices until after July 1st.
Right.
That's one we may ask the vendor if they'll hold the price,
Mm.
but I have to check if we can extend that bid. You can sometimes extend bids, but there's a limitation on how many times you can do that.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, on the 11% per day variance, that is of meals served or money collected?
I'm sorry, Ray, I didn't hear you.
On B2,
Okay.
you talked about there was an average of 11% in the last column per day variance. Percentage, is that of meals served or of money taken in?
Meals served.
Okay, thank you.
It's strictly meals, not the à la carte, it's the reimbursable meals.
Okay.
To your point, Mr. Ross, the reason, it's unfortunate because the food costs went up this year. So unfortunately, if the food costs had stayed static as they were last year, we would have seen that as an increase in revenue. But because the food costs went up so much, we didn't see the financial increase.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments on B1 through B5? Why don't we take consensus on B1 through B4, which are the cafeteria reports, starting with Mr. Ross?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, and then separately, the lunch price equity consensus, Mr. Ross?
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, thank you. Item C, maintenance facilities update, Mr. Deptula?
Okay, good evening. This is a relatively
Good
simple
evening.
one. We didn't add any items at this point. We've taken items off the list that are complete. Next month, I think you'll see a few more items added to the list. That's it.
Do you have a handout for us?
I also know that Mr. Ross had asked, Ms. Levack, sorry, if, I know you had a question regarding, and I said that this would be appropriate time
Yeah.
to ask those questions, so.
I just have several questions. I have several questions on maintenance, primarily on the maintenance and the update on the fields at both Sheehan and Lyman Hall, the athletic fields. And I know we had a discussion, and I was hoping to get some firm answers here. Primarily, my questions are on the softball field, the baseball field. At Sheehan, the softball field last year, of 11 home games, we were only able to use the field for 2 of those games because of the condition of the field, because of water. This year, this year of 11 home games, we had 2 at Pregman Park because of light and 2 at Sheehan. So that still left us with 5 games we could not use on the field. And this is after we spent a substantial amount of money on the softball field to put in dugouts and an electronic scoreboard. And I know 2 years ago, there was a walkthrough with the town engineer. And he sent a letter out with the proposals of an inexpensive way to fix it. And here we've gone through 2 more seasons, and we're going into a 3rd season next year with no apparent work done on it. Also on the track at Sheehan,
You just pause with the baseball fields, just because
Okay.
people watching at home, we probably want to take them one at a time.
okay.
So, Mr. Deptula?
So we did, last year we put the scoreboard in, the year before, I think we did the dugout, so there's been a steady progression of work up there. This is about the softball field. And we identified the problems last year that, needed to be addressed as far as drainage, and they're all things that we're going to handle in-house. It's basically minor repairs. The field's drainage has failed. French drainage, sometimes you get 10 years out of them. You never get any more than that. So most of the drainage on our athletic fields were that style of drain. So all it is a trench filled with stone, and then it silts in. So we're going to restore that after the season. So the field conditions will be much better there, and it'll be drier next year. It should be noted that last year was the rainiest year on record, and this year we started off with a month of the rainiest month on record. And that's really why these fields are so wet. Following the winter season, everything was bone dry. Water tables were down. It was looking real promising. It was actually looking like we weren't going to have enough rain. If anyone drove by the Moran field, up until a few weeks ago, it was yellow, and overnight it turned green. We thanked our lucky stars on that one, because it really looked like it wasn't going to come back. So that's the softball field. It's it's a relatively easy job to do. We're going to dig some shallow trenches, and we'll make sure that infield drains. We're also going to replace some of the clay in that field, because For the majority of the life of that field, there was a clay mixture that was used that is really not appropriate. So we're going to take some of that clay off and replace it with a clay that has the right sand mix in it, so it will drain better. Right now, the clay in that field is, it really doesn't allow any water to flow through it at all. It has, and it wasn't brought to, you know, there was no complaints or issues until they got a new coach, and that's when we realized that there was a problem there. Because prior to that season, we had lost very few games there.
On the baseball field, I happened to be over there for a game the other day, and I walked around the back of the dugout, and I lost.
This is Sheehan, right?
At Sheehan, yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry, at Sheehan. And I lost my shoe. It just sank into the muck, and that was.
Again, you know, we've had more rain in this month than we've ever had. You know, and we've got problems with vehicles and stuff all over our, you know, at every school. Everyone's got to be careful. We've had areas that couldn't be cut because mowers would sink. I mean, that's what we're dealing with this year. You know, I had a complaint recently about a section of grass that wasn't cut. The reason it wasn't cut was because the guy started to sink, and if he continued, we would have lost the mower.
Okay, the track at Sheehan. We talked about it last year, and you went out and you did some painting. Some of that is already worn off, and that was just a temporary fix. Do we have any intention of fixing that permanently or replacing it? Or
When the
what?
track gets recoated, it will be completely renovated with new painting. You know, it's out of our capabilities to do that painting. The company that painted that is a track company. They have all the equipment and the knowledge. We don't normally paint tracks.
I understand that now. I don't see in our budget any place that we budgeted to have the track recoated in the coming year.
It's in there. It's in next year's strategic plan.
Okay. And the turf at Sheehan
That's also in the plan.
to replace or
Yes,
what?
it is. New turf.
Do you have a dollar figure on that?
Yeah, the track and the turf will be it'll be just over $1 million.
And that'll be
And
done,
there are quite a few groups that have, you know, committed to raise money, but I'm not sure if anyone's done that yet.
no. All right, at Lyman Hall, now, the track, I noticed there was one area 2 weeks ago where the track was splitting, and I was there at a senior night the other night, and there's another area where the track is all of a sudden developed. Now, that's fairly new. Did we do we have any recourse to the people that installed it?
It's not a structural failure, it's physical damage that was done to the track. So it's
Right.
not a defect in the track, it's because it was damaged by an outside source, whether, it would be use or something else.
But I understand use, but isn't that what would normally be expected?
Yeah, usually tracks are recoated, every 3 to 5 years, but, we're due on that one. And we did a lot of repairs on it last year with the storm damage, and these couple other things will be addressed this year.
Okay, and the softball field, and I hate to keep doing this, but the softball field at Lyman Hall, I was up there a couple weeks ago, and it was under 3 inches of water on the infield. And unfortunately, some parents, well-intentioned, went out to get the water off and rake it, and they ended up moving the clay and making a little dam around it. And I asked, is there drainage there even?
There's quite a bit of drainage. That field is recessed, it's the lowest field in that area. So that is that's where all the water goes before it leaves the facility.
So,
But again, that's got to do with the weather more than anything else, because the field does drain. The outfield can be a little damp, and there are possible solutions to that, because I think there's a 12-inch storm sewer main that runs underneath that field, but it's deep. We would have to, I think we're talking about at least a 10-foot deep excavation to get to it. So there's options to get water off that field. There's also another option where the field could be, if it's ever restored, it would be brought up to a higher elevation. So basically, you would leave what's there, install drainage, install topsoil, put a new field in. So that elevation could come up quite a bit, and that would make a big difference. But that is not in the works at this time.
Okay, around home plate specifically, there's a series of stairs that come down from the parking area,
Yes.
and the bottom 2 stairs are underwater that day. So will they be putting drainage in there too, or what?
Well, it's, like I say, it's there. We may need to expand on it or, fix it, replace it, but it's, again, it's a relatively minor issue. It's stuff that can be done in-house.
Now, were you able to find somebody on the Lyman Hall track that is going to be able to repair it?
Dalton will repair it. Unfortunately, this is the time of year when all their track projects break, so we can expect to wait 2 or 3 months for them at this point.
But they're committed to it?
They have a work order. It's been assigned to them. And this time of year, like I say, they're not doing any repairs, so it's gonna be a while yet.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions or about the maintenance facilities update, Ms.?
It's not a question, but I think just in listening to what Mr. Ross is saying, I think what we'll do is if, Mr. Deptula, if you could add to your list that's on monthly basis, if you could add some of those items, just so we can keep people up to date, especially on the track, and the drainage where appropriate, but just that we have a running tally so we can keep that going, if that's okay. All right.
Any other questions or comments on this report? All right, then we'll move on to item D, discussion of possible consensus on the Wintergreen Magnet School Partnership Agreement. Dr. Benzo?
Yes, I had sent you a communication a few weeks back saying that we were entertaining the idea, and we wanted to recommend actually to you this evening to remove ourselves from the Wintergreen Partnership as a member of the partnership team. This has no impact on students going to Wintergreen because the students would still go under parent choice. However, it does transfer the cost of transportation to ACES, the governing body of Wintergreen, and removes it out of our budget to help us reduce our deficit that we had from the funding that the mayor has provided us. So it saves us over $100,000 in transportation. We were proactive. We sent out letters to all the families. I sent you all the letter that we sent out. We had a meeting last Tuesday evening. Several parents showed up. We explained to them that their children would still be allowed to go to Wintergreen. We don't have any right to not allow them to go under Sheff versus O'Neill decision. But we said that the transportation would be transferred over to ACES. We had a representative from ACES there, Lynn Bailey, who's in charge of their choice programs, and she shared with the parents that ACES would be providing a bus for the students. If for some reason the number right now, we only have 35 students that are slated to go to Wintergreen, if that number continues to decrease, which we've seen it decrease from 60 when I first arrived to down to 35, more students are staying in district, then the alternative that the parents would have is that if ACES chose not to run a bus, they would pay the parents $5 a day to transport their student to the magnet school. So we believe that, again, we're trying to not take away an opportunity, which we have no right to do so, but we believe that we do need to reduce our budget if we can. As you might have read in the newspaper, Meriden has already taken action on this in a similar fashion, as well as Hamden. The parents were very agreeable. I thought we had a fantastic meeting. Roxanne was there, and so was Dominic, and they were very appreciative. I think the fact that we were being proactive, because we wanted to have that meeting ahead of time, so if they wanted to come this evening to express their concerns to the board before you all voted. I didn't want to have it, oh, by the way, the board voted and now you're out of luck. So they all left very pleased. We had several parents who couldn't make it who called, and we talked them through what was going to happen. Again, their biggest concern was that they didn't want their child to not be able to continue there, and that was never our intent, or intention rather. The other thing is that with the school moving so close now, just into North Haven, there was also, I think, parents said, well, if we ever had to get a point where the bus wasn't provided, it's not as far as going to Hamden. That was a hike, to be honest. And it wasn't really a direct route at all. So I think overall, again, the meeting went well. So we, as an administrative team, are recommending that the board chooses to remove themselves from the partnership, if that is voted on, then what we would do is we would notify Lynn Bailey in the choice office. All the students would still be admitted. They would just get a letter from her saying that they're now being admitted as parent choice students. And then future years going forward, the parents would just they would get a letter from the choice program saying, are you continuing? If so, please let us know. If not, and then we would get that information. The only thing, full disclosure, as I put into the memo to all of you, is that right now we have a cap, which we're allowed to put on our partnership based on a trend, an enrollment trend. So our cap, we had slated for this year to be 39 students. With the choice program, and it really is kind of irrelevant because in reality, we would have to go over the cap anyway. So if we had 39 students that went through the lottery system, the traditional way, and other parents wanted to send their students there, and we told them that you didn't get in the lottery, well, their other alternative is to go to the parent choice program. So the cap was somewhat artificial, and as I said to the parents, out of full disclosure, I don't think the partnership agreements are necessary anymore, because the reality is that parents have the ultimate say. So you either get in through the partnership or you get in through the parent choice program. I think the partnerships were relevant when the school was being built. The state needed to see that certain towns committed to a level of students to go to the school to make it a viable alternative. So I don't think the partnerships, once a school has been established, are really necessary, and that's what we're finding at a lot of our different magnet schools. Again, just a reminder for those people who might not be aware, there are two different types of magnet schools. There are pay magnet schools, tuition-based magnet schools, which that's what Wintergreen and Thames are. And then there's host magnet schools, which are the New Haven magnet schools, where we don't pay for the students to go there. They get the money from the state based, again, on the Sheff versus O'Neill decision. Hartford schools are not hosts. They used to be hosts. They changed, I believe, in 2008 because I was a superintendent who received the bill for the first time in a different district. So they're now a paid program also, as well as Learn is a paid program. Anything that Learn runs along the shoreline and the River Academy that's over by Goodwin Community College. So again, our recommendation is that you accept us removing ourselves from the partnership.
Mr. Votto?
Yeah, did I hear you say that Hamden is pulling out of the partnership too?
They did. They're doing all choice for their students, so
That's
they
significant.
saved over, I want to say it was close to well over $300,000 in transportation. Meriden also voted to. So again, it doesn't change the enrollment of Wintergreen because all the students still go there. We pay tuition still for our students. It's just a matter of the fact that transportation will now come under a state grant that will go directly to ACES, rather than us having to pay for the transportation.
Will we still have a seat on the steering committee or no, now that we're
No.
out of the partnership?
No, we would, there's actually gonna be very
I
few
know Mrs.
schools
Littoral
on
brought
the steering committee now. There's gonna be,
Very few.
there's gonna be maybe 2 or 3 schools, 4 school districts. It's gonna be very, very, very small steering committee.
Mrs. Purcell?
Did they say like, what the number would have to be before they stop providing the bus?
They didn't give they had said around 30 to 35 students. So we're in that, and we were honest with the families. We said this, I mean, Roxanne was there. We have no reason not to share this with the families. I think, again, what made it the better year to do it, if they were still in Hamden, I think we would have been on the fence. But having down the road right in North Haven, we felt this was a good year to make this decision. And the families all shook their head. They were all, Roxanne, if you want to.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. The transportation was the biggest issue for parents, and the combination of the fact that it is not going to change, at least in the foreseeable future, and even if it did change down the road, they brought it up actually before Sal brought it up, is the idea of the location in North Haven is way easier and more reasonable to get their student to Wintergreen. So I felt the parents that I heard, there was no pushback, there were no concerns, they were really comfortable with it, and they were very appreciative that we were proactive about it and, you know, being able to answer their questions, so.
We actually ended up having a great conversation about our programming at our high school and middle school. So
It really
I don't
was.
know if we're going to end up with some more students coming back sooner.
But it's
That wasn't our
interesting-
intent.
But it's
But-
even interesting to talk to these families because, these are families that have recognized some of their kids have different needs and desires and interests, and they are acting on it, and they're pretty motivated to give the right environment for their student based on, the focus of where their student is, and interest of the student. And families articulated that they've got kids in Wallingford school system and thriving, and then they've got a student at Wintergreen that's thriving. So, again, it's just finding that balance for that personal family that meets their needs. So it seemed like they've worked through that pretty well.
And right now, we haven't been able to fill all the seats that we have committed, I shouldn't say committed to, but the seats that we would have under the partnership been slated to have. And we never have to pay for the empty seats. We always only pay for who goes. But we've done the lottery, and we're actually now making all the phone calls, and we have a lot of people who have chosen not to send their children there, even though they went through the lottery. So
Yeah, as somebody
we haven't
that,
filled the
as
seats.
the chair for the last, 8 years or whatever, I've been doing the lottery. Literally, I pull names out of a hat. And I kid you not, to see the change of the number of students that I would be, And I think there were two main catalysts that made a big change was the fact when we introduced all-day kindergarten. That was a real major draw for Wintergreen. And the other draw was when we introduced world language in our elementary school. Those two items, I think, changed the mindset for many families to reconsider Wallingford as a more viable option for them. So probably those two initiatives, are in the last 4 years?
No, actually,
3 years?
the
Which-
kindergarten is 3 years,
3 years.
and then the world language is going on about 6 years.
Okay, so,
And the other thing that was brought up the other night is that sometimes the class size, our class sizes are lower in some instances.
yeah, that's true too. That's true, that did
than
come
Their
up.
class sizes, so.
Yeah, yeah.
Mr. Votto?
No, I was just going to say what Roxanne just said. I think that, because I pulled the names out of
Oh,
that,
we've
too.
all done it. You've done it too, I mean.
And it is amazing how things have changed. I think it's very telling for what we're doing, to pat ourselves on the back, what's going
Well,
on
that's-
here in Wallingford, because it was a fight to get into that
Yep.
that number 60, to get up to that point. There was a very long waiting list, so things have changed. And I think ACES ACES WIMS has also changed their setup too. They had certain things that were attractive to parents in Wallingford that they
Yeah.
no longer even have. So hats off to us. That's the way I look at it.
The other thing I will say is that one of the other things that changed is it used to be a much longer school year
Right.
for
Correct.
them.
They shortened their school year and
They-
also
And
shortened
day.
That's a
school
good
day.
point.
Their
I
school
believe.
day,
Yeah.
yes.
So when you think about our add-ons and their subtractions, if you will, that, weighted things differently.
Right. Mrs. Raccio?
Is there any difference in tuition costs between Parent Choice versus the partnership-approved budget?
No, there's the same, it's the same tuition.
Thank you.
Any other comments on this? All right, so we'll take consensus to remove Wallingford from the Wintergreen Magnet School Partnership Agreement, starting with Mr. Ross.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes, thank you. Discussion and possible consensus on the transfer of funding for reoccurring Board of Education maintenance items to the town budget for 2019-2020.
Yes.
Dr. Menzo.
The mayor called myself and Roxanne later in the day on Friday to share with us the fact that there was an item that was brought up at the town council meeting on Thursday evening regarding the potential transfer of these costs from the Board of Ed budget to the town budget. We had talked, and I know Mrs. Morgenstein had mentioned this when we were doing our presentation, about the fact that Masonic, and specifically Ashler Village, doesn't pay taxes on the education budget. It's only paid on the general government budget. If some of you may recall, way back, probably about 3, 4, maybe even 5 years ago, when we were sitting in front of the town council, I brought up this topic because there is an agreement that the town has had for many, many years regarding what's taxable and what's not taxable. So philosophically, I get what is being stated, and I totally agree with the proposal philosophically. I think The thing, and then Ms. Morgenstein has called since, and we've had great conversations about trying to figure out the number. So first of all, just to clarify, the 1.7 million, which I think was stated the other evening, relates to the reoccurring expenses. It's not staff. It's not. It's nothing other than. It's not benefits, anything like that. It's reoccurring maintenance expenses. So that was where that number came from. So I just wanted to clarify that for everyone, because I think that was a question. Well, where did that number come from? So that was where that came from. So I think that, you know, again, we've looked at this from a perspective of the central office. I think that philosophically we understand, and we, on many levels, agree with the fact that there is an opportunity here. I think that the concerns that we have, and they're not insurmountable, but I think we just need time to get a better understanding of how it's going to work, relate to some of the practical pieces. Because right now, one of the things that we do cherish as a Board of Education, and every Board of Education in the state of Connecticut cherishes, is line item control, and also cost center control. And if we transfer these funds, or if these funds don't get transferred in an account into an account that we don't have the same level of control, then we may, and again, these are all mays, these are not affirmatives, we don't have the answers to these questions, but we may find ourselves in front of the council on a frequent basis, which isn't a bad thing, but it may put us in a position where we have to unnecessarily have some difficulties in terms, or some, I shouldn't say difficulties, some unnecessarily some meetings that really we don't need at this point, or we don't have at this point. The other challenge, you know, it's also, we've been very fortunate because we've gone electronic with a lot of our purchase orders this year. The town does not subscribe to that. So we would potentially be taking a step backwards if we don't get the town onto the purchasing order system that is electronic. In the past, I used to have to triple sign each of the documents. Now, because we go onto Munis, we still review them. So I have to first approve, and then I have to process every purchase order. But it's, of course, a lot easier. We could do it on our cell phone, you know, it's a lot easier than having to do it by the other process. The other thing is, and again, the way I'm estimating this, and I discussed this with Mr. Barone, this year the minimum budget requirement would not be an issue. I believe because it's almost a wash. The $1.7 million is what the increase would be, and then the $1.7 million. So that is good, because minimum budgetary requirement could put us in jeopardy with the state. So that, I just wanted to put that in the column of, okay, we checked that. We don't know necessarily if there are any ECS ramifications. So that's something that is a kind of a question mark. The other good thing, though, to be fair, a positive, is that with the excess costs for special ed, our per pupil expenditure would go down, so our threshold would actually go lower, so we could potentially start regaining some special ed funds quicker. But again, it's a matter of how that all works. There's a lot to be considered there. So I think overall, I want to clearly state that I think we philosophically don't have a problem with the concept. I think practically, as a superintendent, as you know, the leader of the district, I need to know more information as to how it's going to work practically. So that's all I can share with you, is that, again, philosophically, we don't have a challenge with this. We think that, you know, if you live in town, you know, everybody, like I said at the board meeting, town council meeting, I'll say here, I don't have kids in West Hartford Public Schools, but I know it's my job to help pay for that part. I can't bifurcate my tax bill. So I think that philosophically makes sense. I think practically, I'm just concerned that we just need to know more detail. And I would really love to get into that, but I also think that if we're gonna look at this, I don't think I wanna just put my toe in the pond of these opportunities. I'd wanna dive in head first and bring up all the other things that we brought up for the last 6 years, which are other shared service opportunities with the town. I was the one who put that forward with Roxanne, and we did this at our first potluck supper at room 315 on the town council 3rd floor. And we were sitting there, and we all got the look like, how, what are you talking about? And we talked about technology services, sharing those services. We talked about having our trucks and vehicles being maintained by town garage rather than us having to do a separate bid. We talked about helping our food services get out of deficit and take over the food services at the senior center to be able to accommodate those costs, there is a cost savings there. We talked about some transportation costs, even vehicle costs for senior center. We talked about shared printing opportunities. The budget book that's printed for the town, I believe, goes outsourced. We could do that in-house at our copy center and probably save the town money. We got that granular. And we put that slide up year after year after year. So while this is something that I believe in, that we need to start looking this direction, there are many other things. And I would love anybody who wants to volunteer, and again, I can't lead this because I'm just this department head, but if there was an inkling that people wanted to look at this more whole scale, like we did also when we recommended that we come under one strategic plan as a district back in my office, many, many years ago, especially regarding the exact things that Mr. Ross brought up tonight about fields, because Park and Rec in the school system, we gave them the template that we were gonna all work together on, and that didn't move forward. So those are all things that we need to do strategically. So I support all of this, but I just want to make sure that entering into these relationships, if we make these changes, that we have clear guidelines. Because right now we have a very good relationship and trusting relationship with the town hall. And I'm not saying that would change, but you have to be prepared. There has to be something in writing that clearly delineates this. Because I think those relationships will be there no matter who's here, but again, we want to have the artifact of how we're going to do business so that there's that clear understanding.
Mr. Votto?
Yeah, I just want to reiterate some of the things you just said. I think it's a great idea to share those expenses and to also entertain the idea of the town taking over some of the, it always bothered me that we had to put curbs in and things like that with our education budget. However, I go back to when I served on the 11th School Renovation Committee. I wasn't on there because of my expertise in construction. I was on there as a representative of the board and the educational aspect of anything that they were doing. And I'll tell you, and so was Arlene Whalen, I believe. And I think it was a good thing that we were on there, because there are certain things that the people on that side don't understand that are educationally needed first before this is needed. And that was our way of making sure that was happening. And that's the only thing that concerns me about the town taking over, like you had mentioned, the maintenance. We need those guidelines. I think we have to be very clear that, sometimes something needs to be done in our schools because it affects the education of the academics at that time. And I think that becomes a priority. And I think we need to have that say that that's a priority. I think that's the biggest concern I have with, I think it's a great idea.
And I don't think it's insurmountable. I just think we need, I think it would be inappropriate for me to not bring that to your attention just because we need to be nimble in our decision-making. We're dealing with, sometimes an environmental issue in a school. We need to have that ability to be agile and nimble in us resolving that problem. And and I'm not saying we couldn't be, it's just that we need to make sure that we have a clear understanding of how that's going to work. Because we can't wait for a town council meeting. We run special meetings a lot. I know other groups do as well. But I can't impose that because I'm not in charge of that body. So as long as we have structure and we have some guidance, then I think we can make this work if that's what we choose to do. But I think in the absence of that, it just makes me a little bit nervous to do it at this time.
Mrs. Corso?
I'm going to rewind you all the way back. You said $1.7 million in recurring expenses. Can you just give us some examples of what those would be? Are we talking like landscaping?
It's some of the landscaping. It could be or some of our maintenance contracts like elevators, some of our general stuff like that. But it could be also a line item for plumbing expenses that occur throughout the year. It could be some of the general maintenance electrical expenses that occur throughout the year. That you don't necessarily know what they're going to be used for because we have issues that arise.
So this is just when something occurs where we have to go out to bid to fix it?
No, it could be that, but it also could be just general maintenance. It could be just general contracts like our pesticide contracts. It could be all those things.
But Mr. Deptula's department we could still do some of those projects in-house?
Yes, and that.
Like if a pipe bursts at Lyman Hall and somebody needs to go fix it. we can
This
still
would be
do
the
that?
supplies. It wouldn't be the labor, it would be the supplies.
Okay.
Which would be the supplies, the 1.7 or what?
Well, there would be the supplies. What I'm saying to this question is that we could still provide the labor, because we do have a plumber on staff, but them going to Vecinos or whatever it is, the place to
It's
get,
one general supply house that all of Wallingford is.
yeah. And so
like,
we,
Town hall was the same one when something breaks over.
for the most part, yes, we all use it.
All right, I understand better now. Thank you.
No, no worries.
Go ahead, Mr. Reynolds.
Yeah, I was at that meeting last week, so the way it was explained, correct me if I'm wrong, so we would essentially continue doing with what we're doing now. Mark would still be running maintenance, we'd still have the same employees.
Absolutely.
And the way I thought it was explained, that is, if we did have, I don't know, a water pipe burst in Dak Hammershell, that we would go through exactly what we do now, but the bottom line would be that total expense, which would be labor, I guess, and parts, would come out of that account at the town hall?
If we had to do an outside resource, so say, for example, we had Save More that had to come in and do, we had to rent the fans and all that stuff, that would go through the purchase order process with the town. If we had our staff, who was our general maintenance staff, go in and triage, that's gonna come out of our budget, because that's personnel. So if it's overtime on a Sunday, when unfortunately a lot of pipes burst on Sundays, they don't burst during the week because there's bodies and keeping them warm. So that staffing would not be part of this. That all comes out of our regular budget, so the Board of Ed budget. But the actual outside service, like a Save More, or if we needed to bring in another high-level plumber or heating and cooling person that is outside our realm, that would come under this portion, because they would be contracted services. So again, those things are less concerning, because those things seem natural in occurrence. It's just in sometimes during the year, there's an account that we see that, because of whatever year it might be, that it's trending in a negative direction. So we could, and we do this with you, we make transfers right in this room. Those transfers, I don't know how that would process, because depending on what type of account it's put in, and that's the question, I don't know if it's going, I'm assuming it's going to the general fund, but if it were going to a special account that was just our money, that's another thing, because if it goes in the general fund, remember, general fund, say the police department has a problem. Not that this is going to happen, but we don't have any guidelines. What may preclude somebody from saying, well, we looked at the Board of Ed's expenditures thus far, and there's a line item, and they don't know necessarily that we don't use that line item until May because of whatever reason. That's when contracts come up. They might say, oh, they have 90% of funding still in that line item. We're going to, because we need the money, we're going to make a transfer from that line item to this. Now, again, that could be solved based on a communication, plan, but in the absence of that detail, which I do think we need to have some detail, it's difficult. You know what I'm saying? It's difficult to understand.
Well, going forward then, what would be your suggestion? I mean, how do we get this moving? I mean, how do we?
I've been asking this for 6 years, so I need to have I don't have control of other departments. And I've said that very candidly in the past.
The town?
The town. So the council and the mayor, I mean, that's the person, have to, they're the ones who would have to make the decision, which I think there's a good conversation going on. I think this is fantastic. I'm thrilled, because I felt like we were talking in a vacuum. So this is great. This is a good moment. The reality is, I think that we, as was recommended by us for many, many years, is that we need to set up, and really the only person who could do this, or the only group, is the mayor and the town council. And you just say, we're getting all department heads together, and like I recommended, we all got together and we do a problem-solving session. We talk about what services do we all have in common. We do a quick session, we come up with some strategic plans, and then we start putting that in place. But I'm just one department head.
Okay, we have Mrs. Purcell, followed by Mrs. Castelli, followed by Mrs. Corso.
I have two questions. First one is, so would we lose 1.7 million out of the budget if we did this?
Yeah, our budget, we would be moving it over, so basically our increase would be
it's
zero,
okay. So
or
that's one.
0.03.
Okay, the other idea is, if we wanted to do something like that, could we pilot, and I did not actually do it, but I mean, pilot where we track everything that we're doing that possibly would go into that fund, so next year at this time, we could say, yeah, this is where we are, you know, and then the town council maybe could say, well, these are the kinds of things that we would cover, and just kind of, it's like a practice run, I guess, what I'm saying, without
Sure.
actually doing it.
We could do any of those things. I mean, and we could even, I mean, again, if we had, again, it's your decision. I'm just sharing with you that in the absence of clear understanding, it would be negligence on my part if I didn't bring these things to your attention, because we don't have a clear understanding. If we did have a clear understanding, you could move forward whenever you want, if it was acceptable with all of you in terms of understanding. Because you have to, and I don't think it's a bad thing. I think this is sometimes boards of education get caught up with this. You are relinquishing some of your responsibility. Again, if there are clear guidelines that you all agree to, then you might be willing to relinquish that. And I think we have to be open to that. We're in a different time financially. But again, I think there needs to be some guidelines.
Mrs. Castelli?
So maybe I'm oversimplifying, but so that we don't lose the control over what we want, what we feel is our priority items, couldn't it be as simple as tracking over what the money that in other words, the money comes to our budget. However, the money that we spend for those items that are common services that the town utilizes, why couldn't we, at the end of a school year, say, this is the money we spent, so now that amount in an arrears perspective, or whatever the right term would be, is equated, reduces our percentage of the town budget by whatever that amount is. You know what I'm saying?
So transferring the money.
He's confused.
Yeah, I'm confused.
Okay, so I'm
because
probably not understanding
the whole
problem.
idea is that we would never, in the proposal, which, in order to increase the budget of the general fund, of the general town, the money would have to be removed we would never get the $1.7 million.
Right, but I'm saying don't do that. I'm saying
okay,
leave the
I'm
money,
sorry.
leave the money with the Board of Ed.
Okay.
We still make we don't lose control, we decide what we're doing, but all those monies that would have been in that other account, we track. And at the end of the school year, we say, okay, we spent X number of dollars. Now let's go to the town and say, we spent X number of dollars out of our school budget, but really, they really should have been coming from the town, so that we don't lose the control.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what I'm saying? Why
No,
can't
I
it be-
understand. I know exactly what you're saying. I guess I just don't understand how that would work in terms of taxing.
Because you do it in arrears then. You just say,
Okay.
okay, we spent
Yeah,
this
that's
money.
out of my-
Now, the following tax year, you apply it.
I think that would be a
know what I'm
Mr. Bowe's question, because he would have to make sure that, because you have two different mill rates that you'd be setting, and I don't know how that would work.
Why
I
would it
think,
be a different mill rate?
well,
It's the
because
same
you're-
money. It's just whether it's coming here or coming near, right?
well, no, because it's in two different fiscal years. So we're spending it in one, and then you're taxing in another. So I don't know
Oh,
if that
okay,
matters.
okay.
Again, I don't know if that matters.
Yeah.
But I
Just a-
understand what
just
you're
a
saying.
thought, just a
Yeah,
thought. And again, I think maybe there's a committee that
Well,
needs to
that
be.
be also, that could get challenging for, I don't mean to usurp, but is the Masonic and Ashland people, how their tax bill would be generated?
Well, that's what I'm saying, would be generated the following year for whatever we spent that would have come
I
out
don't
of
know
the,
if you can.
out of the town coffers. You know, again, yeah,
Another question. we
I
need
don't think
to ask.
anybody can answer the question, I'm just posing that as a potential.
No, I think it's a good
something
idea.
that should be looked at.
It's an interesting idea.
Okay, Mrs. Corso?
I love the idea of making more efficient processes to save money. But realistically, can it get in writing before July 1? Like realistically, or are we looking at a pilot year? Because I don't think a pilot year is such a bad idea, so that we can kind of see how much money we would be saving.
Again, we're not in a position to make that decision. If the town council acts on it and they want to move forward with it, I would just say that you could rest assured that I'm going to be on the phone to the mayor and to Chairman Schiavone saying that we need to have something in writing before July 1st. If we could suggest that it is a pilot, it allows us to look at it more closely. I don't know, but I don't think realistically moving it forward by July 1st in the absence of those guidelines is going to be a good thing. I think I think if, we could do anything. I mean, as a school district, we pivot on a dime. I can't speak for other departments and other groups.
Well, part of the agenda is a possible consensus on the transfer of funding. Is that what we're looking at tonight?
Well, I think the mayor did ask, and he asked us to have a conversation this evening, which I think was prudent. And then I think what the mayor, well, I shouldn't say what the mayor, what Roxanne and I were talking about, and we wanted to share with all of you that tomorrow night, obviously, the town council vote on the budget as well as this item. So we just wanted to bring this up. We wanted to get a feel for where the board was.
I mean, if we're put on the spot tomorrow night, both Sal and I will be here. I'm sure there'll be board members here as well, there tomorrow night as well. But they're going to look to him or myself as to what's the general feel of the board. And that was why we said it would be important to have this discussion tonight, is just to get a sense of, what, I can't represent, we can't represent you guys if we don't know what you're thinking. So that would not be fair. So that's why, we really are powerless in theory. We can give our 2 cents worth because it does affect us, but it's ultimately the decision of the town council if they wanted to go forward with this. But it would be helpful to know whether Board of Ed supports it and what are their thoughts about it. So that's the mindset, if that helps.
Mr. Ross?
Yeah, I didn't watch the town council meeting. Can somebody tell me what the opinion of the town council was the other night that brought it to this point?
I don't know.
It was 4-4. There were only 8 members there, and I believe there were 4 counselors who wanted to move it forward, and there were 4 counselors who did not.
It didn't, it's not good, right? Yeah.
So in other words, that vote was to move it forward to the meeting tonight, tomorrow night?
Yeah,
I believe so.
If it was 4-4, that's a no.
that's true.
I believe so.
That's, so,
It's done.
So it's done.
It won't go into Tuesday's meeting because the motion failed.
Oh, okay,
that's why.
So there's going to be no discussion whatsoever.
It's done.
So, I'm sorry, I don't mean to
That's-
talk to the audience because we try to, but I really wish I could.
So maybe it would be.
I'm breaking the
So,
fourth wall.
Dr. Menzo, maybe it'd be helpful if.
Yeah, Miss Morgenstein, would you mind coming to the microphone?
That's why I'm asking the question, because that was
If that's
my
okay, I
opinion.
don't mean to put you on the spot. No,
No, you can
th-
go
that-
right there.
no, sorry.
I've never been in this room before.
No,
Yeah.
no worries.
Well, welcome.
Yes, Gina Morgenstein, Town Council. Is this on?
Yep, you're all set.
Okay. So yes, I put the motion forward, and I very specifically stated in order to provide tax income. It was a lively discussion of about an hour, and I was happy with 4-4. I really didn't expect it to go as well as it did, so, but it is dead, because it did not win the majority.
Okay.
So
understand.
it was a motions hearing. If any motion passed in that hearing, it then comes to Tuesday's meeting for us to vote on the budget. So any motion that we passed, then that's what we're voting on, our budget. If we don't get our budget, it reverts to the mayor's budget. And this has dropped for this year, but boy, it is a big accomplishment to start the discussion.
May I just, and I don't want to speak for the board, but I think you've heard that we're willing to invest
Yeah.
in this and
Yeah.
also the time.
Yeah.
So, and I'm speaking for myself personally, and I know I'll get some of my colleagues here jumping on the bandwagon too. But if you could express to the council that we would like to not just talk about this, but also other partnerships, again, I'm here all summer.
So it's that forming with the department heads buy-in that is often a challenge. But yes, absolutely.
But sign us up
Yeah.
because like several board members and Aaron said, we want efficiencies. And I think that we could pilot, and maybe what we do as a board anyway
Yeah.
is maybe, and I don't know, I just offer this, do you think it's good for us to going into next year with the lens and the mindset, let's be mindful of what dollars we would be willing to transfer over versus dollars that we might want to hold a little bit near and dear to our hearts by just looking at our invoices, looking at our experience. Yeah. I mean, it's not a big task to do, but I don't know. It's up to the board as to.
All right. I think Mr. Votto had a question of Mrs.
Yeah,
Morgenstern.
first of all, I want to thank you for even bringing that up. That's great.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's a move that we really have needed for a long time. But do you understand some of our concerns?
Oh, I absolutely
about the
do.
control?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, also the
Yeah.
ECS grant, we don't know about that, our
Right,
funding.
yeah.
I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page.
No, I think it was a discussion. honestly, I brought it kind of last minute, knowing that it was not necessarily from the other side, something that was wanted from the government body. And so, but getting the discussion going, and I love your idea of let's show how it really could work. And just for your information, I see Sal has his green book. I believe it's line 430 is where the specific items are, and it's plumbing and painting and pesticide and things that have nothing
All
to do
those-
with children's education is
Exactly.
literally why I pulled it. Yeah. Thank you for the opportunity to answer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight. That was very, very helpful.
Mr. Ross, are you,
No, that's my question, because I was of the opinion that we don't really need a consensus tonight because it's meaningless.
We just,
okay.
again, we always put things like that because we just never know where the board is gonna go. And so we just err on the side of caution.
Yeah, okay.
So, and we wanted to just make sure that everybody was in the loop and we had a healthy conversation about this.
Okay.
So that if you got stopped at the market or whatever, or a baseball game.
Mrs.
Ms.
Morgenstern?
One more thing, and just so it's absolutely clear, so yes, the intention of the motion is that it go into an account, and Mr. Bose said I need to figure out where that account would be, that is directly accessible from the Board of Education. Yeah, so the only difference is the money that's coming into it, where that money's coming from.
Gotcha.
Thank
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Mr. Ross, are you, okay, then we have Mrs. Purcell, followed by Mrs. Raccio, followed by Mr. Reynolds?
No,
Okay.
not yet.
Yeah,
I think-
I'm okay.
I was gonna say, I think it's kind of been covered, because I was basically gonna say I'm not ready to take consensus, like, we need a lot more information, but it sounds like we're there already.
Mrs. Raccio?
I also think if we're going to go down this path, it was only 2 months ago that the board was approached about transferring maintenance expenses from the cafeteria and funding those with board expenditures. And I think that we should just dive right in and not just stick our toe in. So if we're going to go down that path, let's think about the aging equipment in our cafeterias and include all of the repair and maintenance contracts and everything from those as well, because essentially it's all the board's money.
Agreed. Totally agreed.
Mr. Reynolds?
No, I think it's, what's important though is that we do continue with this. So
I'm
I'm not quite sure, or is it something that's gonna take a few, weeks for this to fall out exactly? what it
Again,
is?
you're looking at the wrong person.
I know.
So,
But who
um,
initiates the,
Well, we've initiated, in my conversation with the mayor on Friday, I brought up to him,
Yeah.
brought up again on the phone, all the other opportunities that we had brought forth, and I said this would be a great opportunity. If it's not, I was, to be honest, I was not under the impression it was a dead issue, so I apologize. But the reality is that I said to the mayor, I said this would be a perfect time to talk about all those other things too,
Yeah.
that we've been bringing up for a few years, because they're not rocket science. I mean, they're things that other places have done for years. In my last district, we did it. 2 districts ago, I did it as a principal. So, I think that, again, I will share again the sentiment of the board to the mayor that we'd like to convene a meeting. I think the council has a lot of opportunity to continue to share that as well, and I know they will. And we get the department heads together. We could facilitate this meeting. I think it'd be really good. First of all, just to have everybody kind of share what their stressors are, what their pain points are in terms of their budgets, and then
Yeah.
look at how can we work collectively to make them not pain points for everybody, because we have a lot of commonalities. We have a lot of common pain points. And I think that if we look at those, it's simple design thinking. It's identifying a problem and then coming up with solutions. And we do that with a lot of things in our district, and we just need to transfer that over to working collaboratively.
Now, years ago, when we were having difficulty with our food services, and I thought it was brought up that there are some towns that do subsidize their cafeteria system.
The money
Food-
comes from the town budget, not the Board of Ed.
Exactly.
correct?
Now,
Yep.
is that just for capital expenses, or is that for the overall budget?
Actually, it was capital. It was, we brought up the pension plan, and it's benefits. So it's health benefits that some towns will actually subsidize in food services. Some towns don't include benefits, their actual employee benefits, in their school budget.
Yeah.
So it really is up to the town.
Yeah.
So I think that's another conversation too.
Yeah.
Because I don't think we wouldn't be coloring outside the lines to have these conversations. We'd actually be just looking at how other towns are doing it, doing a nice little investigation. We
Yeah.
could do our part from an education standpoint. Others can do their part from government. I think we might find some opportunities.
Okay.
I think there might be some good opportunities to
Well, I agree with you. If we're gonna open this door, let's open it wide.
yeah, I mean, why
Move
not?
As many items.
Yep.
As long, again, and then we still have to realize,
Well, and then we prioritize. We do short-term, midterm,
Yeah.
long-term. What ones are ones that we could start doing immediately? What ones are ones that we might have to do a year or two from now? Kind of like what we do with all of our strategic plan. We look at short-term, midterm, long-term. And you look on return on investment. Which ones do you want? Which one are you going to get your biggest bang for your buck? And do you need to do something to get it moved up a little bit closer to the short-term rather than the long-term?
Mrs. Corso?
You sort of answered my question. I was going to ask, I know that Milford, their benefits are done through the
Yeah.
town, but are there other districts in our DIRG that we can look at that may already have some sort of contract, something stipulation in writing that's doing this with the town that we can take a look at and bring that to the table?
What we're going to do is we'll put it on a listserv for CASBO, the Connecticut Association of School Business Officials. And what they'll do is they respond to Dominic like that.
Okay.
So we'll get that information. I think Cheshire has some agreements, if I'm not mistaken.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other discussion on this item?
So can I just ask a question? So based on the information that we've heard, there really is no need to take a consensus for tonight.
But I think this was really good conversation. to
It's a
have.
great conversation, but I do think I would just want to say that I'd like to use our off time to answer some of these questions about the ECS funding, grant, how that potentially affects this reduction and how other towns do it, possibly the idea of doing a pilot and ease into it and then see where it goes. But, I mean, I think the point is not to do it when in April or May, when, we're kind of all fried from budget, but look at it, when we're not fried and it's inappropriate, we can look at it through different lenses and really,
I agree. I think
Talk to
as
people.
we've done as a board, and I think that this is one of the great things, and I know there's criticisms as well of what we do, but I think one of the things we do is we don't wait for others to tell us what to do. We take the bull by the horns, and what we heard tonight is that there's a desire on the board for us to investigate this further, outside of the need to have anybody else tell us to do it.
Right.
So there are some action items that we can take as a team, and at least prepare that information for all of you, and then we can share that with the council. And then, in the meantime, I am going to restate to the mayor that, we'd like to look at it in a bigger term or a broader term.
Right.
But it doesn't stop us from doing the things that you mentioned. And I think that you can consider those things on our to-do list, not necessarily next week, but
Right. No, that's
probably over the
understandable.
summer.
Yep.
And we can start collecting those
or even in
those
the
cost
early
centers.
fall. I
Well,
mean, when
I
you-
want to set up a system to start
Yep.
managing it.
Okay.
So then we could actually have the data to say, these were the, I'm sorry, I'm a geek, I know, I'm sorry. They're all laughing at me, but, I like my systems, because then I can say, and we could say, and I got another bean counter over here now, so the thing is that, we can say that this is where we need to have it, so.
Great. Just want to make sure we were all on the same page for not needing
No, I
consensus.
appreciate it.
Any other further remarks on this discussion item? Well, thank you very much for a lively discussion, and thank you for the input from others. We appreciate that. We'll move on to item F, which is discussion and possible consensus of the 2019-2020 Board of Education budget.
Now, I wanted just to share, because I
Mr.
want
Barone.
everybody to know that we're not trying to assume anything about tomorrow night. However, the fact is that we wanted to take consensus, and we could, if it doesn't, the budget as presented by the mayor doesn't go through, if it weren't to go through, we would have to come back, and if it was adjusted lower for us. But in the hopes and the belief that we're in a good place, the reason why we're moving this forward as a consent item, you still have to vote on it officially next week,
Right.
but we need to start making sure we line up all of our staffing changes. Because at this time, we do still have staff that's going to be reduced based on enrollment. And then, so we need to make sure that we have that all planned so that Danielle, in her capacity as Assistant Superintendent for Personnel, can start going out and meeting with teachers after you vote officially next week. So we're not trying to be premature or trying to assume anything. okay? But we just didn't want to wait till next week because there's a lot of planning. Also, as part of this item, we wanted to share with you, based on the updated unencumbered funds, we did want to also take consensus tonight, because it's all part of the budget, as to sharing with you how we wanted to start allocating those funds. We already had the ones from the strategic plan, which you all know, but there are some items that we do need to act on sooner rather than later because of just getting the resources in the hands of students for the fall. So we wanted to have that conversation also, because if we wait till June, it takes us way past an opportunity. So we wanted to first share with you a document that Dominic and the team put together Friday afternoon around 4, that shares with you how we're getting to the mayor's proposed budgetary number. And then secondly, we have we would want to go through the unencumbered fund usage to get your, to review that and get your opinions on that.
Okay.
I'm just making sure, because I know it's a little delayed.
Yeah. Now, Mr. Barone is handing out a
Yeah, go ahead.
information to us, and then perhaps we can go over this
You know,
When-
this really bugs me that we can't
when
find
he's ready.
$31,000 for this communication specialist.
Thank you.
Okay.
Me too.
Okay, so,
So the budget, the Board of Ed, if you look at this document, the Board of Ed request was $104,248,401. The mayor's budget was $103,461,862. So that meant that there was a difference of $786,539. What we're looking at is the strategic plan item that we do not believe we can move forward at this time would be the communication specialist. We do have the medical careers teacher still in the budget because we feel that that's a necessity to help our students moving forward. The transportation reduction is WIMS and other transportation items based on invoices. The wages are reduction in staff, additional staff that we believe we can reduce based on enrollment without increasing class size. The severance, what?
No, is that just teachers, the wages, or is that teachers and administrators?
It's not administrators, because we're not reducing any administrators. The reduction for retirements for administrator were already taken in the prior calculation of the budget.
So my question is, are we replacing the social studies?
Yes.
Okay. that's
Yeah,
all.
we'll talk about that at another meeting. The severance is for people who we owed severance to that had retired a couple of years ago, plus one person that is not going to retire that we had factored in severance for. So that's why that number is there. Unemployment, because we have a couple of scenarios where we believe we won't need to lay off as many teachers because they have certification to fill into other places, we're able to reduce our unemployment. Anticipated tuition increase is due to the fact that we've have tuitions that happen where we have students who come in the system, or we find that we can't, through the PPT process, no longer service the students. We also, we're going to spend some time at our June meeting, operations meeting, to actually go through all of our specialized programs, because we have adjusted some of our specialized programs to actually increase services. So we are very excited, and we didn't want to do it short change tonight. So we want to take you through our whole K2 system, our whole 3-5, 6, 8, 9, 12 system in all of our specialized programs. So looking at the budget page in the budget book, that's going to be expanded. We have, we're finalizing some agreements with some outside agencies to expand our in-service programs, our in-district programs, as well as enhancing our programs. Those don't have any budgetary implications because we're making it work, but that's another meeting. The other funds, IDA grant and Medicaid, we received additional funds for Medicaid this year. We've been doing very well with our Medicaid reimbursements, which is excellent. Those are for services for students who have IEPs, 504s, as well as medical needs. So we've been doing a great job reclaiming those funds. So we believe it's recommended you use a certain amount of money each year, so we were able to increase that based on the increase that we received, which is a credit to Dominic and a variety of other staff members in the business department. The IDA grant, oh, I'm sorry, Erin.
Mrs. Corso?
Real quick question. For students who aren't on Medicaid, who would have private insurance, can a district bill for like PT services that are occurring during the school day, can we bill private insurance or just Medicaid?
Just Medicaid, I believe, but I'll clarify that. I think we can only, write that down. I'll check on that.
Thank you.
No worries. The IDA grant, we had carryover because every year the IDA grants, we get about $1.3 million. So we had carryover. And so what we're trying to do is utilize some of those funds because we don't want to, you could only carry over so much money. So that's what we're saying, that we could use that. And then other line items, like we do every year. We go through and we look at, okay, if you haven't spent it, that doesn't mean you need it next year. So we go through those line items and we just take that money away. Because you didn't use it this year, doesn't mean that you're suddenly going to have it next year. So that gets us to what we need to do in terms of the reduction. I know there was a lot of discussion about the communication specialists. I just not feeling, in order to balance this, I'm just not feeling that we can make it work. Again, we can always look at as we move into next year. I still think we could entertain potentially just as a compromise, because I know this was a real passionate item on the part of many of you, is that maybe we go out to bid for a fee-for-service opportunity where we at least get like kind of almost a pilot, where we go out and we do a 2-part bid for somebody who would provide us resources, time and materials, so to speak, for offering us some communications consulting opportunities. But I just think it didn't resonate, to be honest. It didn't resonate with a lot of the staff, our teachers. It didn't resonate with a lot of our parents. And when you think about it, I think our medical careers teacher for our high school students is much more value added. So these are the recommendations we have in order for us to close the gap between the mayor's budget and what we had initially recommended to the town.
Mrs. McKay?
Thank you for that explanation, though I still am frustrated that with a budget of 103 million, we can't find 31,000, but okay. And I'm disappointed that, staff and/or parents, it didn't potentially resonate with them. I think that's only because if they even spent a day in your shoes, would they appreciate the communication that you have to deliver to a variety of constituents in a variety of situations. Some can be very difficult, and you always rise to the occasion. This is not a comment about you and your skill base, Sal, but it takes you away from doing other things, and that's my focus. So I am disappointed, and I just would like to say that I hope we do, this doesn't get completely lost. First, I do want to say, I'm with you if I have to pick. Obviously, the medical career teacher is going to get my vote. That's a given. But again, $31,000 is not a lot of money when you consider the size of our budget. So if we can just put it in the back, not too far back burner, but maybe look to what your suggestion. I would just appreciate that just doesn't get lost.
Well, I think it would behoove us to go out to bid anyway, just to get an idea of what the cost would be.
Sure,
I mean, this
and
was
that's
based
fine.
on doing a research with other districts
Yeah.
around us that have people like
Yeah,
this.
because we were talking about a part-time. This is not a
Correct.
full-time position. This
Correct.
is a part-time position.
Yeah,
so-
no, so we need to,
and-
we do need to get a better understanding.
That's
The other
fair.
things,
That's very fair.
While you said that $31,000 is a small amount of money, again, when we come back to you in June and share with you the expansion of a lot of our special services for students, this was really, in order to accommodate those, which in some instances there was new money added. We have right now, just not to a spoiler alert for everybody, but we have we're looking to hire 2 full-time special ed teachers devoted to structured literacy at the middle school. So these special ed teachers would be doing that, which is really important.
And I appreciate that, and I don't want to lose the focus, and I don't want people to think that, everything we do is, in a circle, and the student is in the middle. And we draw rings around that circle, and the further out it goes from that student, the less that gets weighted in terms of a priority, where we all have to make hard decisions, and I respect that. So obviously, we want to keep the rings as close to students as possible, and this obviously is not a ring that's very close to students. And I do understand that, and I respect that.
No, and I appreciate it, and I think there was good news and bad news this year. Without a special ed director in position, the good news was that we kind of got to look under the hood a
Right.
lot closer, but the bad news is that when we looked under the hood, we realized that there were some gaps in our programming for some of our services.
And that
When we
takes a
look
lot
at-
to admit that.
So when we have a continuum of services and we built a road and then the road doesn't continue, it goes from a nicely paved road to a gravel road to a dirt road to grass. We need to actually try to get at least everything up
fair.
to speed. So I'm personally very proud of the work that is going to be in place for students this fall, which I think is going to be phenomenal. I know I spoke to someone today that we're collaborating with on one of the programs that we'll be sharing with you. And they were just taken aback by the fact that we as a district were actually going to make an investment in what we were recommending. There are very few districts who would have done this. So that had to play into this whole mathematical equation. But it doesn't preclude us, again, from going out to bid, getting some real numbers. And, again, as we go into the spring or into the fall, we might have some savings, and we might come back to you and say, hey, could we at least seed not all 31,000? Could we seed maybe 15,000 of a person's time, just to see how it works? But I think we felt we needed to walk before we could run.
Okay. Thank you for indulging me.
Mrs. Raccio?
Well, Roxanne, you and I agree wholeheartedly on this, although I will say that in previous years, this was a full-time position, so the 31,000 was already a cut. So I am very disappointed that this is not there. And I will say that although we do look at everything student-focused, I really see this as a position that is student-focused. Because if the right person is doing this, the communications will, and not to say that you guys aren't doing a great job, but it's not a duty that falls under the purview of any one of you. If the right person is doing this, you will increase parent engagement, parent involvement, and student success. So I'm disappointed that it's not there. So can you put this on the PTAC agenda next week too?
Sure. It'll be the same conversation,
Yeah, I
but
know.
sure. We could do that.
All right, so we were handed out two documents, Mr. Barone. We have this one in support of item 3F, and then we have an additional document. Is that to be considered under the budget at this point?
Correct.
Okay.
This is, I don't mean to, I'm being ventriloquist over here. I'm speaking for Dominic. The second page is the unencumbered fund document that I shared that I said that we were gonna pass out.
Okay.
So when you look at this, we have two columns to expend prior to June 30th and then move to 1%. So you'll notice that the lion's share is gonna be expended prior to June 30th just because of the nature of the items this year. That isn't always the case. In the past, we've had many more capital items that we have to go out to bid. So we have a lot of curriculum items that we want to get in the hands, obviously, of students and teachers by the fall. Plus, we have our structured literacy consultant that we were going out to bid on, as you know. We shared that with all the board. And then the technology items really are all items that we want for the fall, and they're all instructional, so they don't need to go out to bid with the exception of the servers. That one, we got the bid, actually, Karen got the bid today, so that's a real number. And the rest of them are real numbers, but they're based on pre-existing purchases that we've had. You'll notice that the upgrade to the voicemail system, that does have to go into the 1% because we have to go out to bid for that, as well as the cable access and the IT vehicle. Those all go into the 1%. When we get to the facilities, most of that, as you would imagine, goes into the 1% because we have to go out to bid. With the exception of the sidewalks at Moses Y, Mark believes he can get those underway prior to June 30th using our present contract with BMAC. And then the last piece, we were originally seeding only $10,000 for instruments a year, but we figured we wanted to really give the support to the music programs. So we're looking to provide $20,000 for each of the high schools and $10,000 for each middle school. Because we feel that we can really get us farther down that road in those areas. Because every year we kind of nitpick at it, and to be honest, one piece of one instrument for the high school is between $5,000 and $7,000. So I think it was like there were 3 tubas for almost $10,000 last year. 3 instruments. So we felt if we continue to chip away at it that way, we're never going to get where we need to go.
Mrs. McKay?
So can I just ask a question?
Sure.
So the items that got pushed out to the 1% account, Sal, you mentioned because we have to go out to bid. Is that the only reason? Is it also because, it's just work that'll get done after?
Over the summer,
Yeah,
after, yeah.
is that both?
Yeah.
I just want to be clear on that.
Correct. It's out to bid, and it's work that would be done later.
Yeah, that's what I
um,
thought.
And
Okay,
timeline.
That's all, thank you.
All right. Any other discussion on this? So then, we're taking consensus on the 2019-2020 Board of Education budget
As presented.
as presented, and in the amount of $103,461,862, as well as consensus on the proposed use of unencumbered funds for fiscal year 2019-2020 as delineated on this sheet in the amount of $1,008,644. Is that correct?
Yes, and this will be all contingent, obviously, if we have that fuel bill issue,
Right.
if we have a delayed bill, there might be, again, depending on how the end of the year ends, there might be a little bit more available, and we'll bring that back to the board.
Okay. So is everyone clear on the consensus? We'll start with Mr. Ross, please.
Yes.
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 Yes,
And yes, thank you.
Thank you.
great job.
Item G.
No, could I just say
Oh.
something? I have to say this. Dominic, he's the man.
Yeah, great job.
So really, I gotta,
Dominic, you're the boss.
he actually
No?
came in Friday, because we really, to be a fly in the wall. But on Friday afternoon, when you have Miss Latour and Miss Belizzi, myself, Karen, we actually could have raided her whole account because she was at a conference, but we were nice. We didn't raid her, because usually if you're not in the room, you lose money. So Dominic did a phenomenal job, and I just want to say thank you very, very much.
Okay.
All right, the next item of business is item G, presentation and possible consensus on the facility study survey for the community. And we have our
Yes,
representative
Rebecca
from
Augers here
Malone
from,
McBroom.
yep, from the consultants.
Does everyone have a copy of the latest draft? Okay.
We do.
So, the district sent out the SWOT analysis last week, which we thought was a fair assessment of the 3 scenarios that you're putting forth in this survey. We'd suggest that perhaps we should link directly to that in the introduction, where we do have a link to some background information, because that's a nice summary information. But I'd like to just walk through the survey as it is now, which it's been greatly improved with the help of a subcommittee of the board and staff. And perhaps if we could get all the way through it with a little explanation as to why the questions are the way they are, and then circle back to revisions, that might be the quickest way. So it's going to start off because the administration has offered to translate the survey into Spanish, so we will run parallel surveys in English and Spanish. The first question will be just which language are you taking this in? And then we get to the introduction on page 2, which is just a very quick introduction as to why the district undertook the restructuring study at all, and giving an estimate of how long the survey is going to take, so that people are aware that this is a very quick hit survey and will more likely move on. Then on page 3 is when we really start to give more background information on the work that has been done over the last several months, and give the findings, which are really the reasons why you explored any scenarios for restructuring in the first place, including enrollment decline, information on the state of affairs in the buildings themselves, discussion about nearby communities having invested in their first facilities recently, and how that impacts economic development, as well as just real estate values in general, and then obviously your budgetary pressures. We have a link to the section of your current website where you've housed all of the information that's been discussed and presented over the last several months. This is where I would like to maybe call out in particular that SWOT analysis for a link. And then it moves on to page 4, which just has the enrollment, recent enrollment trends as well as projected enrollment at the middle and high schools. And then on page 5 are the first set of questions. And these questions are really more philosophy and personal values of the response taker, and they're put up front just to get a sense of what is this person making their decisions based on, absent an actual decision in front of them. Just what are they valuing? We are giving a list of factors that are all considerations that you made during the discussions on the various scenarios, and they're considerations you make on a daily basis as a Board of Education on how you are operating your schools, what are you prioritizing and balancing. So we are asking folks to rank the importance of the following issues for the middle schools, and they are educational programming, the conditions of the facilities, accessibility to athletics and extracurriculars, traditions, costs, and then reputation of the school system as it relates to property values. And you'll see these recur throughout the rest of the survey. And then question 3, which is really the second question of substance, to rank these same issues as they relate to the high schools. Again, just trying to get into the thinking of the person taking the survey so that we might be able to do a little more cross-tabulation of results in the end.
Bless you.
Once those personal value questions are answered, we launch into the scenarios. And there's background information given on page 6, which again just talks about how the scenarios are preliminary. They are a 30,000-foot look at some potential futures, and it explains that any scenario that involves significant renovation or construction is not likely to occur in the next 5 years, and why that is the case, that there would be additional study needed, town council approval, you would have to develop ed specs, review by local and state authorities, and so on and so forth. So just to make sure that people are not taking the survey thinking that you're implementing some significant change next year. On page 7, it describes the 3 scenarios, and we dubbed scenario 1 strategic plan investments, because it really is about following your strategic plan and implementing the capital recommendations within that. Scenario 2, we dubbed renovating existing buildings, because this is renovating the 4 buildings as they exist today. And scenario 3 is renovate middle schools, 1 renovated high school. This is the scenario that consolidates the high schools. And we've given a summary table of the order of magnitude costs that were presented with regard to these scenarios, and it plays out, it details them by school. It lists the estimated total project costs and the assumed town share of the costs based on current reimbursement rates from the states, which are subject to change. And then the question is simply, which scenario do you prefer? Based on the answer given in that question, you will get 2 additional questions. So if you prefer scenario 1, if that's what you indicate, then you get the questions on page 8, which are, why didn't you choose scenario 2 and why didn't you choose scenario 3? And indicating those same sorts of values. You know, what are your considerations when you're rejecting this scenario? If you had answered that you preferred scenario 2, you're getting the questions on page 9. And if you indicated you prefer scenario 3, you get the questions on page 10.
Rebecca, could I
Yes.
just interrupt?
Hold on.
It's intuitive, the survey, just to answer a question.
Yes.
So it's intuitive, so it only gives you the questions based on your answer. So
Right.
you don't get all the
Yeah.
different options.
Yeah.
Because it'll be too confusing. So if
Yes.
you answer option 1, you only get the last
Yes.
2. If you answer option 2, you only get the option 1 and option 3. If you
Right,
answer
so-
option 3, you just give why you didn't pick option 1 and 2.
Right.
So you don't get them all. It's really, it's an intuitive survey, so that's helpful.
Right. Yes, that is only if you do it online. This is how it would look if you're doing it on paper. We can add some text to a paper version to make it a little clearer. But we're gonna have to have all the questions there, because we don't know how they're gonna answer.
Right.
Yep,
Can you, so you could just, when it says which scenario do you prefer, if you pick one, then you could say
Yes.
skip to page so-and-so.
Right, so we'll
Right.
have to change it for the paper version.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's simple.
Okay.
Yep. And then if I could just get through the,
Right,
Final?
let's try and get through the survey, and then we'll ask the
Yeah.
questions, please.
and then the last set of questions is the demographic information, again, just to help us in tabulating results and cross-tabbing results. Simple questions: do you live in Wallingford? Which side of town? What's your relationship to the school system, and your age? And once those questions are complete, and you are required to answer all the questions, you will not be able to advance in the survey if you are not responding to a question. You really only are answering, I think it's 9 questions in total. Then you're given the thank you and next steps, which is when the survey results are expected to be presented back to you. And just a reminder that none of these scenarios will be implemented very quickly, and a thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ross?
I just have a couple of questions and a comment. When we talked about renovating existing buildings,
What page are
We've-
you on, Ray?
page 7.
Thank you.
We've always been used the terminology renovate as new, and I think that's important that it stay that way. Not just some renovations, it was renovate as new.
I'm not sure. Could you repeat that, Ray?
Yeah, as we've gone through this and everything we've had up to date, when they talked about renovate, the term uses renovate as new. And
Too
now
new.
it's well, the
new.
word was as new.
Yeah.
Anyway, here it just says renovate, and I
Gotcha.
think it's important that it as new or 2 new ones included. And number 2, somewhere in the cost scenarios, I think it's important that they understand that A, that it's 5 to 6 years down the line, and B, that there's a cost of increase compounded of 3% per year compounded in the cost. So the 5 years down the line, these costs are going to go up substantially. I think that's critical.
How do we, are we assured that it's 3% every year?
That's what the consultants told us at one of the meetings. I have
Okay,
notes on that.
because I just wanted to make sure, because I don't want
Is
to
what
put
you
out a
would
number
figure.
and
No,
then
that's,
get,
we were given
because the
that.
opposite side will say that we inflated the increase.
No, the consultants gave us that number.
So,
3% per year compounded.
so can we go back to just the terminology, renovate as new? Do you want that up in the, scenario
Yeah.
2, renovate as
As
new?
new,
Okay.
yes,
All right.
please. Right, I think that's important.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that.
And then when we discuss that the rough order of magnitude costs is shown below, we can talk about, this is current figures, estimates for, 5 years down the line would add about 3% per year.
Per year,
compounded.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
please.
Mrs. Costelli?
So I have a few questions. First, can they stop and save the survey as they're taking, if they get interrupted and they can't finish it at that point?
I have to double check on how that works. I don't know that you can save a response and go back to it, but I will double check on that.
Okay. I'm a little concerned about saying the survey should take about 7 minutes to complete. I think it's fine to say it'll take 7 minutes to complete after you've educated yourself, after going to the link and looking at the strengths, the SWOT analysis, because I think it's critical that they do this, and so that they're fully understanding what it is they're getting, what's the bang for the buck. And I don't think they get that without seeing this first. And I don't think it's going to take just 7 minutes to really absorb this.
The only question I have, and this is more of a technical question, is I don't think we can mandate in this survey that they go read that document.
No.
No, I agree that it would still be up to them to click
So
on
they
the
could
link to
still-
go there.
Yeah.
But I
Okay,
think
I got you.
to say it's going to take you 7 minutes, and they go, okay, good, I'll do this now. And then they get to that link, and now they're reading this document. Well, that's taking more than 7 minutes. So I think,
Gotcha, I
however we want to
understand.
clarify it, if you do your due diligence and look at the documentation we've provided so that you can make sure you're understanding the 3 options, it's going to take a little bit longer than 7 minutes.
So I don't know how we want to word that without,
Can you say, you know, although the survey will take 7 minutes, it's, you know, recommended that you do, you know, it's recommended that you read or brief yourself on what, you know.
Which may
and
take
refer-
15, you know,
and
come up
refer
with
them
a,
to the document.
right, and come up
Yeah.
with whether it's 15
Right.
minutes or 20 minutes, whatever time we think is appropriate for them to be sure that they do fully understand. I'd also like to suggest that maybe page 7, other than the actual, which scenario do you like, should be more, or closer to that link to the SWOT analysis, because they kind of go hand in hand to me.
So maybe put the SWOT here.
Sure.
Or put the
That's
SWOT
a
here.
good
What-
idea.
You
That's
know
a
what I'm
good
saying?
idea.
Only because if you're reading the SWOT before you get to this, you kind of really don't
Yeah.
know what you're
And maybe
talking
we
about.
put, maybe that's where we encourage you to go to this link
Yep.
before making, you know,
Move it on.
Right,
That
before
makes
making your
sense.
choice, because I think it's important for them to really know what those 3 options entail.
no, that's a good point.
Okay, and just a comment, where we say scenario 1, strategic plan investment, should we clarify that, and maybe I'm wrong with this, but should it be more like facilities, so, you know, it's like strategic plan of facilities maintenance investment? Because that's truly what it is. It's not just our strategic plan, which incorporates a lot more. Do we want to be
Well, the
specific?
first line does say, the strategic plan has identified
Ongoing maintenance issues, you're right, it does
Yeah.
say it there, but
But
should we
I-
have it in the, you know,
Sure.
just,
I have to go along with that.
All right, Mr. Votto?
I was concentrating on that one too, and I still don't think it says enough how different that one is from the other two.
but they will get it if they read the SWOT analysis.
I don't like to count on that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know if people will do that, take the time. I don't know, somehow it needs to be said in there that this is not renovation. It's just fixing those things that are either broken or need to make the school work or something.
Well, by adding as new, but by adding in scenario 2 and 3, renovate as new, does kind of differentiate.
I get that,
Yeah.
Roxanne, but I
Yeah,
don't think a
but
lot of
it's
people
not
know
enough.
what our strategic.
Do you want to
plan
just
even
simply
is.
add the sentence that this is not a complete renovation of the schools?
Something like that.
I mean, I don't,
think it needs.
I don't know,
Sure.
because it
Doesn't hurt
isn't
to
a complete
clarify.
renovation, so we don't want to mislead people.
Know our strategic plan.
All right.
Right.
So do you
All right,
want to
let's-
title it,
Let's just finish this first.
scenario 1, facilities maintenance as identified in the strategic plan, and then add that sentence?
I also think it might be helpful to include that to repeat the fact that that's a 5-year
Right,
plan, and after 5 years, then
right.
there's gonna be more.
Mm-hmm.
This is just covering 5 years, that's just a
That's a good point.
5-year strategic plan investment, or, it's just 5 years of maintaining our current
I
facilities.
just think they need to realize that even though it's the least expensive, it really doesn't do much to improve our schools unless it's a special need because something breaks down,
Right.
you know? And
Maybe, and to go along with what Aaron is saying, that, because that's a really very, very good point. This is not a complete renovation of the schools. This, this scenario would be revisited on an annual basis and may require additional expenditures to maintain the schools,
Yeah.
something to that effect. I don't know. I'm just trying to, because that's what you, because it needs to be,
Yeah.
we
You
don't,
want
because
people to
our.
think it's gonna be fine.
Well, because
after
our
5 years.
strategic.
Right.
When our strategic plan
That's a
isn't
good
a
point.
static document, we review it you
Right.
review it every year.
Right.
So it's not even really, I mean, it's a 5-year, we have 5 years of stuff, but that,
It's moving.
It's
target.
moving
Right,
every year.
because next year, today, it's $17.3 million, but a year from now, it could be,
$23 million.
Right. right.
That's a really good point. So we have to, I think that's something for you to consider, because
Yep.
that is a really good point.
Clean
It's
that
not,
up, yeah.
I don't want, we wouldn't want, because I think that's the way people left the or the $70 million renovation, is that everybody left that thinking the schools were done.
that's
Right.
And
And
they
then when we came back and said they're not really done, people were like, what do you mean? We spent $70 million on the 11 schools. So I think that's actually probably a good forewarning for us, because I think that was a misunderstanding. I remember one of my first meetings, there was a previous person she retired from the town hall, was at the meeting. And I remember we were doing our strategic plan session, and when she was in the facilities group, And she was like, well, what do you mean? We just spent 70 million. And I remember Mark and I sitting there trying to explain to her that there weren't a lot of things that got accomplished. So, good point.
Maybe we,
Mrs. Castelli?
so maybe we could say for that scenario, it's that the Wallingford Public Schools, I want to say that's combines, or this scenario combines the 5 years of maintenance, of ongoing maintenance. I wouldn't call it issues either. I just think this scenario combines the identified 5 years of ongoing maintenance for each building.
I don't think it has, though. I don't think that's accurate.
Okay.
Because I think our plan, what this would be doing is it would be we've strategically mapped out 5 years of maintenance that needs to occur. If we
Right.
had all the money, we'd do it in 1 year. But because we know that we don't have all the money, and some of the things don't need to be done right away,
Right.
it's a combination of things that need to be done over time,
Okay,
as
so you're
well as
saying not
things
all of it would be.
So I think it's the we have to work, the wording has to be.
Yeah, you got, we just want to make it clear that we're
Yeah,
just
so-
taking the 5 years' worth of stuff, maybe not all of it, but stuff that we've identified for the next 5 years, and we're combining it, and we're gonna, if scenario one is the one we choose, we're gonna just get it all done now.
Yeah, because even just adding the word, the Wallingford Public Schools' present 5-year strategic plan has identified, even including that word present, meaning that, and then going in, it must be noted that this plan is not inclusive of all things that need to be renovated in the
Right.
school, or anticipated and unanticipated. And that it's an ever-evolving plan. So
Yeah,
I'll leave that to the consultants to come up with some wording, and then we can send that.
You get our point, right?
To- Yes,
absolutely.
Yeah, because people won't understand.
Mr.
Yep.
Votto?
I think your point about the other 70 million renovation project is so well taken, because if we choose scenario one, there are gonna be people saying after it's all done, "Well, how come this doesn't look like it's done? How come?"
Exactly.
I mean, you know, it's as simple as Rock Hill's front door, we never knew where that was.
Yep.
You know? And it was done, but they said, well, how come this wasn't done in the school, the windows and stuff? I really think that's why we need to clarify that scenario one.
This is really general maintenance. I mean,
Yep.
general maintenance and repairs. This is not, this
I
is
think
not.
that's what you need to say. is
Yeah, I
general
mean,
maintenance
it's
and
not
repairs.
beautification, it's not addressing necessarily instructional programming, it's general maintenance. Yep.
And then just one more,
Mrs.
just
Castelli?
one typo comment on page 3, you're missing the ending paren.
Parentheses.
Huh?
Oh,
The
you're-
paren, after
Right.
19% at the middle schools, 11% at the high schools, you need the
Yeah, the-
ending parentheses there, okay.
Got that too.
All
I
right.
feel better now.
Mrs. Corso?
The enrollment graph, I'm sorry, that's back on page 2, I think? No,
Yep.
page,
4.
is that different colors online?
It is.
Because it's really blurry.
Yeah, it is different colors, and it's a JPEG. We were trying to shrink it to maybe make it a little clearer, but it wasn't happening for us, but we can work with it some more.
Also, in the original study that came out, you guys had broken it down to a medium projection, a low projection. Is this the medium projection that we're
Yes.
looking at?
Yep, we
This
can
is the medium
clarify that.
projection.
Yep.
I think that would be helpful to, because it could be more, it could be less. This is what we're using.
Mrs. Purcell?
This isn't actually on the tool, but just the process, and maybe you already talked about this and I don't know, but how do we keep someone from doing multiple surveys?
So we
Like
talked,
paper and electronic, or
Talked
multiple?
about that one.
You already talked about it? Okay.
No,
Well-
in the subcommittee.
in the
So you-
subcommittee, we
she'll
talked
answer.
about it. So we could limit one response per URL, but I don't want to do that because we have plans for going to places where folks might enter this, and folks might be entering paper versions for us, like SCOW or the library. So we don't want to limit the capacity to do that. So instead, what we've done in the past when we've opened it up to multiple responses per URL, we can see when a response is taken in by what URL, and we just look for any abnormalities. We check in, we can usually figure out if it is the library, if it is something like SCOW, and judge it based on that. It usually works out.
Okay.
Any other questions about this? So, I know that we had a timeline in mind.
Yes, we're still looking to, according to our plan, is, we have a rough draft of the Spanish version.
Okay.
So we, based on your changes, we'll
Sure.
modify the Spanish version. We're looking to get this out to families and, community and doing some press releases that it goes out, on Monday, the 20th. I'm developing a calendar to go out to those other places, SCAL, the library, a variety of other places in the community to give the survey over the course of the next 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, actually, excuse me, next 3 weeks. And then the survey will close June 17th. Then the data will be culled, it will be pulled together, and the Board of Ed will get the initial results shared, well, the results shared with them at their regularly scheduled meeting in August, on the 26th, which is the first day of school. We talked about this, the consultants and myself, that we didn't want to have the results over the summer in the event that people are away on vacation and they weren't able to come to a meeting and express their opinions. We didn't want to think anybody, we didn't want anybody to feel that we were trying to, avoid having further conversation on this topic. So we felt that most families should be back by the first day of school, or the eve of the first day of school, or it's actually the first day of school. So that we could give them opportunities to come to that. And then after that, the results will be shared with the town council. But the board will have to review the results, and see where those fall at that point.
All right, so we're looking to take consensus on this because we're having a timeline, so.
With revisions.
Exactly. I'm sure the board input this evening we would like to see the revisions prior to voting on them on Monday, so. Is that doable?
Prior to voting on them on Monday?
So
or-
the thing is that we would, if we do this, then we could delay the release of the survey until the 21st, Tuesday.
Right.
And that's what I think I heard said. So what we'll do is we'll get the revisions, if we can get them by Friday, like we did this time. We'll
I-
put them,
Yeah.
we'll probably get them by,
We can get them to you tomorrow, and if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to just go through a list to make sure that I got
Okay,
'em all.
so do you want to do that right
Yep.
now so that
Yes.
anyone that made a suggestion, if it's your suggestion and it's
Speak now
not
or forever
quite
hold your
how
peace.
you envisioned it, please speak up.
Okay, so on page 3, we have to pick up the parenthetical close. On page 4, clarify the chart and clarify that it's the median projections. Page 7, we'll make changes to the language on the strategic plan investment to emphasize that it's a 5-year ongoing general maintenance and repairs scenario, that it may change, it is revisited annually, it's not a renovation plan. We will change the language that it's renovate as new for scenarios 2 and 3. We will add a line about just before the costs, that these are current costs, that you can anticipate 3% per year compounded additions. And then we will include the link to the SWOT analysis just prior to question regarding which scenario do you prefer.
and just with a statement that we highly recommend them.
That you review that SWOT. And I believe that was it.
Okay.
Just the 7 minutes, that's
Thank you.
taking of the survey is 7 minutes, but you have to educate yourself first, so.
Okay.
Right,
And
and
then-
then at the bottom,
Mrs. Purcell?
number 4 on the bottom of that page. So if they're doing paper, you have to write where to skip to.
Oh, right.
For the paper version, yes. Okay.
That's a good one.
Any other input from the
Well,
board on
yeah,
this?
Just one
Mrs.
more thing.
Castelli?
For the hard copies, maybe for that page 4, if it's possible, I don't know if it's possible, if one line could be dotted versus, because we don't want to make them color, but if one line could be dotted versus, so that they can identify which line is which. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
If that's possible.
Why couldn't we on that just identify the top one as the middle school and the bottom one as the high school? Instead of, because if the printing's gonna do dotted and it doesn't work out, because they're far enough apart.
The graph.
On the graph, just say the top, and I'm not sure, but just say the top graph is high school, the bottom one is middle school.
Yeah, we could add labels as well. We will change that.
Because if you do a dots and it doesn't print good, they won't know.
Any other additions or changes?
So
So,
the survey, I'm fine, but the SWOT analysis, can we give feedback to
Yeah, you can give it to me.
Okay.
I'd be happy to. I'm taking it. No, I no, it's, I'd rather have it as, I have no, I'm just trying to combine everybody's ideas together. I'm just the clerical person on this one.
So
Yes.
the letter from the parent about the slot analysis you have,
Yes,
right?
that's going to be coming in public comment, because that's what that is.
Okay.
So when we get to that agenda item, Ms. Litvak is going to read that into the minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
okay,
Can I just get clarity on the timeline? So if we,
So the
even if we
timeline-
turn around
it sounds
revisions
like,
to you.
yeah, we're looking to see the corrections in our Friday packet,
Yes.
so that we can make sure that, we're all happy with that. And then Monday, at our regular board meeting, we'd be taking action on accepting the survey, and then it would go out on Tuesday, is that my understanding?
So if we give you revisions ahead of Friday, we can get the Spanish version
Oh, yeah.
revised and ready to go? Because that would be
Yeah.
our only
I mean, it
holdup.
might be best to, rather than overpromise and underdeliver, let's say Wednesday,
Okay,
just to give ourselves the gift of 24
Right.
hours to make sure it's all accurate. You'll have to test it, and you'll
Yep.
want to do all that stuff
Right.
and make sure the buttons work. Because the worst thing we do is have a
Yep.
bad start to this. So what I'll do is we can send out another communication to families this week saying that the survey is going to be delayed until the 22nd.
mm-hmm,
I think that's 22nd,
yeah.
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
The 22nd, and that, then it'll allow us to message it appropriately in a press release, all those things.
What's that?
Good, okay.
All right, any other further discussion on this? So we'll take a consensus on the facility study survey for the community with the revisions that were indicated. And we'll start with Mr. Ross.
Yes,
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes.
And yes. Now we're at the portion of our agenda which recognizes public comment. So if there are any comments from the public, please come right up and state your name and address.
Absolutely.
Welcome.
Good evening, thank you. Jared Liu, 59 Curtis Avenue. Most of my questions are related to the facility, so I'll actually just pick up on the survey at first. Are there any thresholds for, invalidates the wrong word, but making sure that we have a representative sample? So, are we tracking number of surveys that are filled? And if we don't get over, a certain number of surveys, then we go back or we extend the timeline, or that it matches the demographics of the town, or that we get a certain percentage from folks who don't have kids in the system, et cetera. You get my point?
I think I would defer to our consultants, because they also did the survey for the POCD, and we know that the rates for that, well, I don't know if you want to share, they were kind of low, so.
Yeah, I think for the POCD, there were about 1,800 responses, but
For 43,000, 46,000 residents?
Right. So we're typically looking for 10% of households to be a fairly representative sample. When you do phone sampling, they're looking for just over 400 responses, from that representative sampling. The demographic questions we're asking, we're gonna be able to at least monitor if we've hit a good cross-section in the community, and we know the demographics of the community, so we'll show you a comparison of, did we hit a good cross-section or not? That's my best answer at this point.
And Mr. Leahy, to your point, and I appreciate you asking this question, because I know I'll get asked, why is it going to take 2 months for the data to be shared with the board? You just asked the perfect question as to why it's taking 2 months. Because we need to make sure that we validate, or they validate everything and then feel comfortable with it. And if we do find that on June, whatever it is, we could extend it, and we'll be happy to. We just, we just took the recommendation as to kind of what was a good window. So.
And is there any plans to specifically get the survey out to folks in town who don't have children in the school system?
Yeah,
I heard
so
the library and I heard Scout.
We're doing senior center, library, we're doing Silver Pond. We're doing Park and Rec. So we're trying, YMCA is going to also use it, so we're trying to do it there. We're trying to take all of our groups. We actually have a meeting next Tuesday where we have all of our different community groups. So we're going to be sitting down and going over when we could be at all those different locations. And then we're going to really be leveraging the newspaper, our internet, as well as social media, to try to get that out to people that they don't have to have a child in the school system to vote on this.
Great.
We're going to try to be more inclusive than I think.
I don't know if
We
he's-
learned a lot, I
Don't
think,
have it finished.
from the POCD survey, because we want to have greater participation.
Yeah, I think that demographic in particular is really important because there are a lot of people, actually, to your point, who may live in another town and they feel it's their obligation and responsibility to pay into the tax system, but they want to have a say.
Correct.
So, I did actually go back and look at the POCD. Just wanted to, because it keeps getting referenced. And I certainly saw the line about just understanding our facilities, but I saw another line in there, and I just wanted to get some clarity on this. So it says, consider whether the master plan, in that case it's referring to the school master plan, should be done in conjunction with a town-wide facilities master plan to assist in identifying opportunities for co-location of programming and facilities. I haven't seen a town-wide master plan, have you?
That's not my role or responsibility.
Right, but the line
So no, I
says,
haven't.
it says for the school board to consider whether the school master plan.
We wouldn't have a plan to put it in.
I can pull the line if we're sort
No,
of
no, we wouldn't
misunderstanding each
have, the
other.
master plan that they're referring to would be the town's master plan.
Right,
So we can make a recommendation, but I'd be making a recommendation to something that doesn't exist.
that's my question, so I just want
Okay.
to make sure. I haven't seen a town-wide master plan.
Neither have I.
You haven't seen a town.
No, we've had these conversations though, and we've offered, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting,
Yeah.
about those meetings regarding master plans, regarding fields and other departments. The question that always comes up with option 3 is what happens to Sheehan. We have shared what our recommendations may be with the mayor and with others, that it would be a community resource, looking at bringing other agencies together, such as Park and Rec, because you have the pool, doing a community theater, moving central office over there, adult education, releasing the building of adult ed, which is in the center of town, maybe for commercial purposes, bringing over Scout potentially, bringing over youth and social services as part of Park and Rec. So we have, but there is no, you're correct, there is no town master plan, but we have ideas to add to it if there ever becomes one.
Absolutely, yeah. So just before I started, continued to go down the path of where is the town master plan, I just wanted to make sure there wasn't one that was private, that the
Not that
public
I'm
hadn't seen.
aware, no.
And then the other question within that is, can you define co-location? I had a definition, I'm just not sure what the intent of co-location was.
Where is it in reference to? I'm sorry, because it might be something that,
Yeah, it's in the POCD. I think it was on page 24.
Oh.
That is a total shot in the dark. But I can quote you the line
what's,
again.
yeah, if you could, that'd be great.
So it said, and then the parenthetical here was that the school board should consider whether the master plan should be done in conjunction with a town-wide facility master plan to assist in identifying opportunities for co-location of programming and facilities.
Well, that would be examples that I just shared.
Yeah.
Co-location would be Park and Rec with the adult ed, with Board of Ed services, with community theater, whatever it may be. So that would be the co-location piece, SCOW, all those other things.
And that was my understanding, was that that was some of what you were trying to get at in the facilities plan was co-location. I just want to make sure I was defining that the right way.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sal, just to go over the list, I think you got them all, but I'm gonna just say it again. As far as the following sites where they can get the survey, it'll be the Boys and Girls Club, YMCA, Town Library, Senior Center, SCOW, Silver Pond, and Park and Rec.
Yes, and we do want to make sure that we also are going to put something on Channel 19
Yeah,
to reference the survey, because people do watch that access channel. So we are working on that. We're working on a video that's going to have, hopefully, some highlights of the schools, what they presently look like for people to see those, as well as a PowerPoint that will include the SWAT, so that people could watch that on Channel 19 also. So we're trying to put this out, and that'll be on a pop-up on our website, so that when people come to our website, have you taken the survey? And then it'll have the video, it'll have we're really working hard on this, in the
Mrs.
absence of a
McKay?
communication specialist. I figured I might as well just say it for you.
Mrs. McKay?
So it just hit me, my demographic, I do not have kids in the school system. I do not have grandchildren, period. So they're not in the school system. How would I know, I'm a taxpayer, how would I know this survey's out there? I mean, I would not, I'm not getting anything from the Board
So
of Ed.
if you don't get a newspaper, then you're probably,
Well, okay, but
it's-
let's say I did even get a newspaper. How often
well,
is
we're
it?
gonna, yeah, we're gonna do a press releases in the newspaper. We're gonna try to, I've already talked to Lauren about that, and so
Okay.
she said she would do stories on this. So
Okay.
we'd have the link put in there, or if they need to go to the link, we would direct them to our website, which would probably
Which
be
is
the
fine.
easiest.
Yep.
So we put it on the
What if I
town
don't
website.
get a paper? I mean, but there is a demographic that doesn't have kids in the school district that would be interested. I
How
just-
did the survey, I guess the question is, how did they do the POCD to people?
I never saw a
in the town?
POCD survey, so that answers my question right there. I mean, there is a significant number of people that live in this community. Patty Purcell, do you have grandkids in the district? Yeah, so you're in the same bucket as me, and if we didn't read the paper, well, Ray, you're covered, because we're going
Oh,
to,
yeah, I'm
you're
yeah,
covered.
yeah.
You're the senior, I don't go to the senior center, I'm not involved in SCOW, I'm just saying that.
So what we could
I don't know
do,
what
I
you could do.
appreciate, what we could do is we can investigate, and we do have the reverse 911 system in town, and I know that could be used, Everbridge could be used in this circumstance. And some towns would use this to remind people, everybody should be signed up for that. We could also investigate, which we have done in the past and we haven't been successful, is putting something in everyone's electric bill. Just reminding them. But again, that's something we have investigated in the past, and we haven't been granted permission. So those are the two things that are the ways that we can meet. We could reach out to every person, and there might be more.
So we did do the POCD surveys, Ilona McBroom did, and as I recall, it was social media that got the biggest responses here. We could see an instant bump by, a couple hundred as soon as it hit one of the several town dedicated social media pages.
That makes sense.
Any other remarks or?
Sally, you
Okay.
don't think the electric bill thing
Social media, though, I think that
We
should
could,
cover.
we could offer,
My husband does.
we can offer
Yeah, I
it
don't go on Facebook.
and see, and we'll make the photocopies.
Mrs. Castelli?
So two things. When you put the word SWAT out on the.
We'll spell it.
Make sure so they
Strength, I don't
understand.
even put it as SWAT.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
use-
yeah,
I
just
do strengths,
strengths,
weaknesses,
yeah.
opportunities, and threats, and then parentheses SWAT.
Okay, and the other comment would be, can we also add some of the daycare, I know we can't hit them all, but some of the daycare centers as a place, because that would be people that don't have kids in the school system yet necessarily.
That would affect them.
It would definitely be affected.
I mean, even if we could get, if they have a bulletin board at
Yeah.
daycare centers or
Oh,
just
yeah, they
somewhere, a reference area to say, and we could post something up there and just, I'm not even sure
Same
that's.
thing with
I
town
would
hall
think
too,
the link
right?
to the daycare directors, so that they could put in their individual.
Yeah, there you go. Their newsletter, there you go.
Nobody's gonna like.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
yeah,
have,
yeah, yeah, that's
we have all
perfect.
the context of those,
Yeah,
'cause,
that's perfect.
um,
Yeah, that's perfect.
so.
Are there any other comments from the public? All right, seeing none there, I am in receipt, and other board members as well, from a communication from Melanie Rosacci from 9 Platt Drive, and this gal has individual students in the 5th and 9th grade, and she has asked that her letter be read aloud tonight, so that is recorded. So therefore, I will do so. Good morning, Dr. Menzo and Wallingford Board of Education members. I am currently out of town and am unable to attend this evening's meeting. Therefore, I want to share my thoughts in writing on the SWOT analysis that was conducted on the facility study that was reduced to 3 options. I want to start out by saying that I firmly believe that everyone on this email chain is working to ensure that the educational environment in Wallingford is best for all students in our community. With that being said, I would like to bring to your attention the following points. First, I am requesting that a 4th option be added to the survey. I am requesting that option 4 be to renovate two high schools and capital improvement to 2 middle schools, which will include air conditioning. I am unclear as to why that wasn't on the table in the beginning, and option 4 would have a reduced cost as compared to option 2 and possibly option 3. Second, I am requesting that this survey be offered in every elementary school in Wallingford in person, akin to what has been done for other town surveys, perhaps on each of the school's field days and fifth grade graduation. I believe this is more than appropriate, given it will affect those students the most. Third, in option 2 and 3, it states allow for maximized state reimbursement. In option 2, you are still maintaining 2 high schools, but in option 3, you are eliminating 1 high school. As you know, these are 2 very different options for students. This is the values part of the conversation, the big versus small part of the conversation. Research shows that students of lower socioeconomic status do much better both academically and socially in smaller school settings and do worse than their middle and upper class peers in large school settings. I tell you this because, as you know, state reimbursement for school projects is based on free and reduced lunch eligible families. I believe Wallingford is at 56%, therefore we would be creating a large school environment in Wallingford on the backs of kids that research shows will do worse in that large environment. That just isn't right. Fourth, the language used in the SWOT analysis in each of the sections appears to be biased toward option 3. For example, if in option 2 the schools are being renovated to new, why in the threats section would it state superficial improvements to instructional spaces? If we are renovating to new in 1 high school or 2 high schools, the improvements to the instructional spaces should not differ. Additionally, the word may seems to be used in strategic ways throughout the SWOT analysis. For example, option 3 states in the strengths section that it may reduce long-term maintenance issues. I would like this statement to be more fully vetted and explained. Long-term maintenance will always need to occur on a facility, especially given the fact that the proposal is to build onto the older high school facility in town. That is misleading. Also in option 3, it states, may impact certified staff through cuts based on certification areas and may impact some non-certified staff. Here the word may should not be used. It should be will. Teachers, support, staff, and coaches will be cut if Wallingford decides to close 1 high school. The consultant should just outright state that in the document because it is the reality. Soft peddling the controversial issues does not accurately portray the options, especially option 3. Along that same vein, the transportation issues, traffic issues, and parking issues that will result from eliminating 1 high school were grossly understated in the threats section of option 3. These are just a few examples of how the use of language is misleading and biased towards option 3. I would ask that all options and their strengths and weaknesses threats be written in a more forthright way in the future. Fifth, in the SWOT analysis, the number of students being availed the opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities is somewhat addressed, but I want to address athletics in particular. In the weaknesses section of option 3, it states, limits opportunities for students to participate in high school athletics. 2 teams going to 1 means 1 team is eliminated, but also states a larger school creates an opportunity for full freshman and JV squads for more popular sports. This plan will actually reduce the number of students that would be given the opportunity to participate in a varsity sport, especially juniors and seniors. As we know, labels matter to teenagers, and being labeled a JV athlete versus a varsity athlete will matter to kids. Also, some kids do not blossom athletically until junior or senior year, but we will have already labeled them otherwise. 1 high school will reduce athletic opportunity, not increase it. Sixth, I believe it was stated in one of the meetings that construction would take approximately 5 years. What will happen to Sheehan during that time? The facility needs to be addressed. The athletic fields need to be fixed. The turf was scheduled to be replaced 6 years ago, and our young athletes are beginning to turn ankles and hurt knees on the divots in the turf. Even if it is decided to close Sheehan High School, the facility and athletic fields cannot be left status quo for 5 years. How will this be dealt with? Lastly, I am requesting that you fully consider the quality of life issues that are real with the consideration of eliminating 1 high school in a town as geographically large as Wallingford is. Traffic concerns are real. Extremely lengthened times on school buses for students is real. Less children being given the opportunity to play varsity level athletics or have lead roles in school productions is real. living through years of construction and educational disruption, especially at Lyman Hall, is real. Although these issues may be more appropriate to bring up with the town council when it is time, I am asking that you consider them as well. I am requesting that this letter be read aloud tonight so that it is recorded on record. Thank you for your time and your thoughtful consideration to this extremely important decision for our town, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts. Kind regards, Melanie Rosacci, 9 Platt Drive. If there are not any other public comments, then I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.